Awesome. Well, thank you guys. It's easy to talk to y'all.
Yeah.
Do you have a few extra minutes or you have to hit the road?
Yeah, I got a few minutes.
I really liked hearing about your background and all that. And it was cool that you were able to link like what people wanted to flow state.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Was there anything that leapt out at you that you were like, oh, that's flow state? Like anything in particular?
Well, I mean, there's 8 components to flow. It's not that I heard my clients. There were a few that I felt like phrases and words that I kept hearing from them, particularly as it relates to sex. And I think I covered those for the most part.
Effortless?
Yeah, like wanting to feel effortless, lost in the moment, the world around you to disappear, things like that.
Okay, yeah. Is there and is a lot of that's the book is called like The Science of Desire, right? Or
Anatomy of Desire.
Anatomy of Desire. Is that the main thing that's depleting in couples, that their sex just doesn't become as interesting anymore to them?
Yes. Complaints about sexual desire, experiencing a discrepancy in sexual desire is the most common presenting issue for sex therapists. And so much of it is about poor quality sex. Of course, you're not going to want it if it's not very good. And so flow state, I think, can help people have really great sex and therefore desire it more. So it's kind of a backdoor approach.
Is there a common thing that kind of deteriorates desire in couples over time? Anything you've heard?
I think, like so many couples talk about just getting stuck in a rut. They're kind of going through the motions, doing the same thing every time. It's like they kind of find what works. And even though life changes, the environment changes, things around them change, they don't evolve that part of their relationship. And I think that's when a lot of people start to feel it, like, man, I'm just not feeling as connected, and to an extent, we know from the research that that's normal. It's when sex becomes less neurochemically driven, like it is in the honeymoon stage, that kind of automatic intensity fades. And that changes to intimacy. But I really believe that we can find intensity within intimacy. And, I think that it's really special to get intentional about it, to give it the time, energy, and attention it deserves, as opposed to feeling like it's just automatic, It's just because we're high on dopamine. And we actually know from, flow research that the neurococktail we get from a flow state is a lot better than the neurochemical cocktail we get from the honeymoon stage. It's more potent. There's more things going on. And that's why, like, not one of my research participants said that the best sex of their relationship was honeymoon stage sex. It was sex that came later when there's greater intimacy. You've gone through life together. You have this shared experience. So it's like, okay, how can we teach other couples to find that same kind of intensity as opposed to distance?
That's the story of hope, isn't it? That's beautiful.
Yes.
We don't have to go backwards or start over with someone else on that newness. That's not the answer. It's the depth.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
In your research, did either sex experience a greater loss or more likely to experience loss of desire?
Well, we know from other research that women experience a dip in desire more quickly than men. But in my research, in terms of the variables I was examining, I didn't find any gender differences. And I wasn't looking at who was having low desire. I was looking at who was experiencing flow, and there were no gender differences in that. But other studies have found that women experience a loss of desire more quickly than men. And need sex to stay interesting in order to feel engaged.
Yes.
No.
Of the 5 themes, there's sensuality, curiosity, adaptability, vulnerability, and attunement, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about vulnerability. Could you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah. So vulnerability really explores the emotional aspects of sex. I primarily work with heterosexual couples, and in probably 75 to 80% of those cases, it's the male partner who has higher desire. And when I ask him, what it is about the sexual experience that he longs for, okay, why do you have more desire? What is it about the sex that you want more of? None of them say, I want to have more orgasms. Yeah. Okay. They could take matters into their they say, because it's when I feel most connected to my wife. But for a lot of these guys, it's the first time they've articulated that. They were not socialized to really say that sex, is a form of emotional expression, and sometimes can come off to their partners like it's just a physical release. And so, vulnerability in that chapter, I talk about both men and women, but it's really getting in touch with the emotional side of sex and learning to bring that out in a way that makes it feel more intense.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Mm-hmm. Do you work with couples too that are like in transitions in life, like having kids, new job, moving, injuries, maybe
empty
even
nest?
menopause?
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah, all of the above. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that can make fragile relationships really susceptible, going through a big life adjustment. So, and that's, I think, where the adaptability chapter, as I said, comes into play. It's about how to, learn to work with these struggles and not against them.
This is great. I'm excited to check this book out. And I like how you said, like, you didn't want it to be something you just read and then put away. You want it something you can go back to and get more from. That I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Yeah, I mean, this book is evergreen. The principles aren't going to change, I don't think. So
yeah, good for you for writing the book, for listening to your clients. That's where it all came from, is you really listen to their feedback.
Right. I wanted to help my clients really reach their goals. And hey, selfishly, around the time I started doing this research, I was newly engaged, and I was like, I gotta bottle this feeling. I don't want to change for me. And 10 years later, I'm still going
good for you. I love that you tapped into that professionally and personally. And good for you, Emily. Good for all of us, quite frankly.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on and sharing so much, Emily. We sure appreciate you, your expertise, and your time.
My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.